What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and we have some big updates for you today, especially as it relates to the first round of the NFL draft, okay? There have been some signings over across the league that I think have impacts at the top of the draft board and will kind of impact the options potentially for the Jets at number 7 overall. So let's get into it, okay? First of all, about a week ago, the Giants signed Jameis Winston, and I thought that was Winston going to be kind of a bridge quarterback, and that meant that Shedeur Sanders was going to be their pick at number 3 overall. Well, last night, the New York Football Giants also signed Russell Wilson to be a quarterback. So now they have Russ Wilson and Jameis Winston. I no longer believe that means the Giants are going to go with Shedeur Sanders at number 3 because, quite frankly, Daboll and Shine, they need to kind of save their jobs, and maybe going with a rookie wasn't going to get it done. The other big move that happened was the New England Patriots signed Stephon Diggs to a 3-year, $69 million deal. I think that has impacts. First of all, people were out there saying, are the Jets going to sign Stephon Diggs? I told you, no, they were not. And now it is clear that he goes ahead and signs with New England. But if you remember here now, the Giants and the Patriots were both teams that drafted ahead of the Jets in the first round. So in most mocks, right, the kind of top 6 picks before the Jets were 2 quarterbacks, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, Abdul Carter, the pass rusher out of Penn State, Travis Hunter, the two-way stud out of Colorado who won the Heisman Trophy, and then some combination of guys like Mason Graham, the defensive lineman out of Michigan, Ashton Genty was mocked a lot of ways to the Vegas Raiders, guys like Tet McMillan, that big-time wide receiver. Those were the names, kind of leaving maybe what we thought was our pick of the top offensive linemen, whether that's Membu or Will Campbell, and Tyler Warren for the Jets at number 7. So basically, we were really excited as Jets fans here on Jets Latest that the Jets would be able to kind of allow the draft board to fall to them and pick from options that I thought were all pretty good. Ultimately, I thought and still do think that they're going to go offensive tackle. But here's the shakeup, if you will, right? First of all, the Giants, now with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, I don't know that they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders at number 3. And there have been rumors that Shedeur Sanders may fall, right? So what happens is if the Giants go ahead and draft someone else, like a Mason Graham, for example, or a Travis Hunter, for example. What that does is removes an option for all of the other teams that are in front of the Jets, and maybe, just maybe, one of these other teams take an offensive lineman like Campbell or Membu that we have been targeting, right? The other thing that is possible here with the Pats signing Stephon Diggs, they are probably not going to take Tet McMillan. And also, I think it looks like they are building around Drake May, right? So they may now be in the market for an offensive lineman at number 4 overall, right? So the thing here is, I thought at number 7, there would be no offensive lineman taken. It looks like now, because Shedeur might fall, because the Pats may now go O-line, it kind of bumps up everybody in front of the Jets. And I don't know necessarily if we will have our top pick of offensive linemen at 7. For example, if the Jets draft board, their 3 biggest targets were Membu, then Warren, then Campbell, we would have gone Membu, given the way the draft board looked. But now it looks like maybe Membu is off the board, and it changes our plan to pivot to actually draft Tyler Warren, if that makes sense, right? So I think that it does, in fact, change the options for the New York Jets. So we have to keep a very big eye on this, and Diggs signing in New England and Russ signing with the Giants really does change the complexity of the draft. What could also happen is it may inspire other teams who do like Shedeur Sanders to want to trade up. So there have been people talking about, could the Jets trade down in this draft to get even more assets? Well, maybe when the Jets are on the clock, or it's looking like the Jets are on the clock at 4, 5, 6, and ultimately at 7, there's another team down below that likes Shedeur Sanders and wants to move up and get him. And then if the Jets still have the old lineman on the board and Warren, maybe it is okay for them to trade down a little bit, get more assets if they believe they can still get one of their primary targets in the first round. If they drop down to 10 or 11 or 12, something like that. The other impact of this is some people were mocking Mason Graham, the defensive lineman stud, who's really being rated like a Quinnen Williams, like a Jalen Carter of past years, who went to the Philadelphia Eagles and has become a stud out of Georgia, right? Graham is being rated at that kind of level. Problem is, he's not going to be available at number 7 anymore. I never thought he was, but this idea that some of these other players are now moving up if Shedeur falls, I think reinforces the fact that he is not going to be available. So these moves, I think, do potentially change the options. I thought it was going to be great that the old linemen were kind of falling in this draft, but without Shedeur and maybe with the needs changing in New England, they don't actually fall. So another interesting impact of this is our good old friend Aaron Rodgers. He now has his options becoming a little bit more limited. Remember, he was flirting with the Giants among other teams. He has been linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And with Russell Wilson signing with the Giants, it kind of means to me he also knew that Pittsburgh was not an option for Russell Wilson anymore. So what I believe now is, yes, Aaron Rodgers is going to ultimately sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember, he had a 6-hour meeting with Mike Tomlin earlier in the week. You don't have a 6-hour meeting if you weren't kind of talking turkey, talking details, and ultimately are going to sign there. But remember, part of why I love this new regime, this new culture, is because we are avoiding the drama that went around with Aaron Rodgers. Some people are asking, well, why hasn't he just signed yet? It seems like you're connecting the dots. It seems like that's the right fit. You know, DK Metcalf there, George Pickens there. They have a defense. It seems like that's the logical choice. I'll give you a reason why. His good old friend, Pat McAfee. I looked at the schedule. Did you know that Pat McAfee has a big-time live show on April 9th? Where? In Pittsburgh. And what is that big-time show called? It is called A Big Night Out with Pat McAfee and Friends. I'm going to go ahead and guess that one of the big friends there is going to be Aaron Rodgers, whether that's him announcing his deal, whether that's him, kind of being a guest right after he signs his deal. I all believe that that's part of the media circus that Aaron Rodgers seems to like, and that will be connecting him to Pittsburgh when he can do it with his boy McAfee live in a big splashy move. All I gotta say is, thank you for that no longer being our problem. We don't have to worry about the media appearances. We don't have to worry about the drama. We don't have to worry about all that stuff. All we've got to worry about is establishing and building our culture of young, talented guys that want to compete, want to prove something as we build the green and white from the ground up. Speaking of building the green and white from the ground up, I just mentioned Mason Graham as a defensive lineman, right? That many people would have loved the Jets to get at number 7. I don't think they're getting him at 7 anymore. So I wanted to look at what are some of the other options at defensive tackle, right? And first of all, it's going to be interior defensive line. That's really the issue, stopping the run, because we have two pretty good young edge rushers in Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson. Remember, Johnson got hurt last year, should be back just fine. Will McDonald really stepped up, had double-digit sacks. We like those edge rushers that we have. It's really the inside. And by the way, when you're next to Quinnen Williams, you have an opportunity to flourish on the D-line. Now, first things first, don't forget, we signed a couple of guys early in free agency a week or two ago, right? We signed Byron Cowart, which, by the way, he grades out in PFF as a 59, which is not bad and is better than some of the options I'm going to talk about. We signed Derek Nottie. We signed also Tufele as well. So just like how wide receiver, when we signed Tyler Johnson, I thought he was a good player, but kind of the high-end backup. Just like how on the O-line, when we signed Okorafor and Josh Myers, I thought they were decent players, but really high-end backups. These signings like Cowart, Nandi, I think Cowart could be the starter, okay? Nandi could be a situational run stopper, right? But Fele and others, they could also be high-end backup, which means if it ain't going to be Mason Graham, where do we go on the defensive line? I've been saying for a while that our cap space flexibility that we have really provides the opportunity for the Jets down the road, later, after free agency, after the draft, when there are still veterans out there, for this to be an opportunity for us to sprinkle in some of the veterans at a lower cost. And I believe defensive line may just be one of the positions we do this. There are a lot of veteran defensive linemen that are out there. Guys like Calais Campbell, guys like Linval Joseph, guys like Jonathan Hankins, guys like John Jenkins. These are all guys who, yes, are in their 30s, right? But could be a stopgap, could be kind of a reliable option as we see if Cowart, Nandi, and others continue to develop. And I believe that could be a way. If they're going to spend some money, it could be a guy like Raekwon Davis. He's 28 years old, was with the Indianapolis Colts for the last few years, but his contract was $7 million. I don't think we need to spend that much. And then remember, I mentioned this a few weeks ago on Jets Latest. There is an old friend, Folu Futakasi, right? He was with the Jets a few years ago. He had his best years with the Jets, kind of underperformed with the Houston Texans. He is a free agent as well. But these guys, Davis, Fatukasi, they actually graded out on PFF and elsewhere lower than Byron Cowart. That's why I believe that he, the signing from the Bears, could be the starter. But keep an eye out on this because defensive line could be a place to kind of sprinkle in a veteran. Remember, I told you that really the only 30-year-olds on this roster are the backup quarterback, Tyrod Taylor, and then the specialty guys on special teams, the punter, the long snapper, and the kicker. So if they sprinkle in a D lineman that's in his early to mid 30s, like a Calais Campbell, like a Rankins, that's not the worst, okay? Like a Linval Joseph, that's not the worst, all right? Because we still do have those young guys battling, competing, and one of them will emerge next to Quinnen Williams. So keep an eye out on that. Tomorrow, what I'll do is I'll also look in the draft and see what kind of defensive lineman could be available if it's not Graham at 7. But again, as we've been talking about, right, in rounds 2 and 3, where the Jets have picks number 42 and 73 could be options. My preference is for them to go with a pass catcher there, wide out, tight end, hopefully still after being able to have access to Campbell or Membu at number 7 overall, but we shall see, because now with Shedeur Sanders possibly falling if the Giants aren't his home after the signing of Russell Wilson, and with the Patriots now having made their big splash at wide receiver and then maybe going offensive tackle, the top of the draft board certainly shakes around. So keep your eye out on that. Do not get kind of, sensationalized with all of the reports that are out there. We continue to move forward in a smart and strategic manner, and I'll be here to talk to you all about it on Jets Latest. So that'll about do it for this episode. Remember, like this episode, subscribe to the channel, tell a Jet fan friend to tell a Jet fan friend, and feel free to write in the comments or hit me up on social media at Spittin' Speeds. I try to respond to as many people as possible. And if you want to hear more from me about these signings, about the impact on the draft, remember, go on over to Sirius XM, the fantasy channel number 87, where I am the host of the FTN Fantasy Show. We have great insights, great conversation, and really promote FTN Fantasy, which is a great website with plenty of tools to help you betting, to help you at fantasy, win your leagues, and win that cash. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest, but we will be back tomorrow as usual to talk all things green and white. Until then, we'll see you later. Peace.